I stirred from a deep slumber to my husband's grave words. He had been ensnared in a relentless time loop to rescue me. In mere 3 hours, my life was to be ended by my closest friend. I gazed at my husband, Laurent, my face etched with disbelief. His expression was deeply serious, his knuckles turning pale as he gripped my shoulder firmly. Lin Yu, I'm utterly serious. Every word I speak is true. In just 3 hours, Soo-hee will gruesomely slit your throat. This is my 5th loop through this ordeal. Despite my desperate attempts in the previous 4, I've failed to save you. Soon, Soo-hee will kill me too. Laurent's grip on my shoulder grew tighter until a sharp cry of pain from me made him release his hold. Confusion swirled within me. Today was supposed to be a celebration of our first wedding anniversary. Our friend Soo-hee had warmly invited us to spend the day at her villa. However, Laurent now claimed that Soo-hee would be my killer. I realize you might doubt my words, he said, but I have evidence. In 1 minute, a bird will fatally crash into the window. 1 minute later, bang! A crow slammed into the window. The window vibrated with a loud tremor. Blood smeared across the pane, shockingly vivid in its redness. I clasped my mouth, my heart thundering. I was beginning to grasp the truth in Laurent's words. In 5 minutes, your phone will ring with a telemarketing call about some new real estate. I clenched my hand tight. 5 minutes ticked by. As predicted, my phone chimed. With shaky hands, I answered. Sister, are you still interested in the house? The salesperson's voice oozed enthusiasm. Yet, an icy chill swept over me. I quickly disconnected the call. Yeah, you believe me now, don't you? Laurent's grip tightened, his anxiety palpable. I nodded, swallowed by fear. Yet, it baffled me why Soo-hee would want to harm me. We had grown up together as close as sisters. Before Laurent came into my life, we were inseparable. Laurent drew a deep breath, his eyes now shimmering with unrest. This isn't the Soo-hee we know. Do you recall the car accident a month ago? I nodded. A month earlier, Laurent, Soo-hee, and I had set out for her new interactive murder mystery venue. En route, we were embroiled in a serious multiple-vehicle accident. A police car collided with a rebar-laden truck, which then slammed into our car. I was in the back seat and blacked out immediately. When I came to, I was already in a hospital bed. Miraculously, the 3 of us had only suffered minor abrasions. Laurent took my hand once more, his palm unnaturally damp. I never lost consciousness during the crash, he confessed. I witnessed the steel rebar from the truck dislodge and skewer Soo-hee's head. I was shocked, finding it hard to believe Laurent. But Soo-hee had only minor scrapes on her head. If the rebar had actually penetrated her brain, she surely wouldn't have survived. Laurent, could you be misremembering? He shook his head. At first, I thought I was seeing things. But having gone through these 5 loops, I'm convinced that this isn't the Soo-hee we know. What I saw did indeed occur. The more I listened, the deeper my confusion grew. Laurent elaborated on everything he had observed. Remember the police car that initially collided with the truck? I nodded, thankful that we had narrowly escaped greater disaster. But the fate of those in the police car was tragic. 2 police officers and a convict were reported dead. Laurent added, after the rebar impaled Soo-hee, I saw someone poke their head out from the police car. It was the convict. I've never encountered such a petrifying face, or more accurately, such a haunting gaze. He smiled at me before extending a hand marked with an odd symbol on its palm. He uttered numerous strange phrases in a language that was completely alien to me. Then, I witnessed a police car abruptly ignite, while the man exhibited no hint of fear. Amidst the inferno, I distinctly saw him grinning. Later, after I lost consciousness and awoke, I was astonished to see Soo-hee seemingly unscathed. How could she have merely minor injuries when a thick steel rebar had impaled her skull? Laurent's words cascaded out faster, betraying his unease. I initially persuaded myself it was all a hallucination driven by my fear. Yet, I later sought an expert well-versed in these arcane matters. and I showed him the symbol from the convict's hand. He revealed it was a spell for soul transference, a deeply sinister magic banned since the late Middle Ages for its cruelty. My eyes gradually widened. Do you believe that the person we now know as Soo-hee isn't truly her, but that convict? My heart thudded violently as I voiced this thought. Luran nodded affirmatively. The expert clarified that the prerequisites for this dark magic are exceptionally stringent, necessitating that both involved are at death's door for it to succeed. And this dark magic harbors a deadly defect. It demands a fresh body each month. She covets yours, Yaya. Today, the last of July, she is compelled to exchange vessels. Thus at midnight, she will enact the sinister ritual of soul transference. A chilling dread crawled up my spine. The air grew inexplicably colder, tinged with the dampness of dread. Luran's tale sounded like the stuff of fantasy, yet disbelief was a luxury I couldn't afford, for there was no reason for Soo-hee to want me dead, unless she wasn't Soo-hee at all. Then, a series of urgent knocks shattered the silence. Yeah, that cad is here begging to reconcile. Come out and lend me your counsel. Soo-hee's plaintive voice carried through the door. My nerves wound tight. Luran nodded at me, a gesture of silent support. He murmured so softly it was almost lost. Proceed, for your appointed hour has not yet come. Shirking now might only raise her suspicions. Fear not, this time, I am resolute in your defense. His assurance brought a measure of calm. With a deep breath, I opened the door, only to be abruptly yanked outside by Soo-hee. I struggled to maintain my composure, yet my heart thudded with fear. For the face that greeted me was not my beloved friend but a fearsome criminal. Soo-hee muttered indignantly. He didn't even pay back the 5,000 yuan he owes me, yet he thinks we can reconcile? He must be dreaming. I was hauled by Soo-hee into her room. Then came a decisive click. Soo-hee suddenly locked the door behind us. She turned slowly, her face devoid of emotion, and gazed at me. At that instant, my heart thudded violently. A vague, tingling sensation spread across my scalp. I strove to maintain a semblance of calm. Luran had predicted that my demise at her hands would come at midnight. The time was only 9:15 p.m. Death was not yet due. Calm down, Linyu, I chanted inwardly, slowly steadying my nerves. Why lock the door? I ventured with a strained smile. To my surprise, Soo-hee suddenly burst into tears. She lunged forward, clinging to me, her head pressed against my chest.
Suesabdristrandli.
Before long, my chest was soaked with her tears. Thank goodness, the cycle hasn't ended. Her statement made me tremble. Why? Did she know about the cycle too? This is my 5th cycle already. Linyu. Soo-hee looked up from my chest, drying her eyes. She tried to quell her quivering breath and confided. I have saved you 5 times, yet I've never truly succeeded. You will be murdered by Luran at midnight. He will slit your throat. I've exerted every effort, yet you are still fated to die. Soo-hee's lips faintly trembled. Yet within me a storm was brewing. For Soo-hee's words mirrored those of Luran. Only now it was Luran, not Soo-hee, who was destined to be my killer. You speak of enduring 5 cycles? With tears in her eyes, Soo-hee nodded. In 1 minute, your boss will call. I regarded Soo-hee with skepticism. Yet, a minute later, as if on cue, my boss called. Next, your brother will seek a loan from you. Indeed, I soon received a message from my brother asking for money. Now, do you believe? Soo-hee pressed, her gaze piercing. My mind was a whirlwind, but I nodded almost reflexively. Both Soo-hee and Luran's premonitions were manifesting. Why would Luran want to murder me? The true Luran would never wish you harm. But the problem is, this is not the Luran we once knew. A profound fear shadowed Soo-hee's delicate features. She unfolded a different tale. The man who had a steel rod penetrate his skull in the accident had taken on Luran's identity. She also mentioned the convict and that chilling symbol. And the person whose body was usurped had turned into Luran. A profound disquiet overwhelmed me. As soon as I stepped into the mansion, It was clear I had walked into an immense, spiderweb-like snare. Yet it was unclear whether Soo-hee or Luran was the predatory spider at its core. Her expression seemed earnest. I was hopelessly confused about who was deceiving whom. "Why don't we attempt to escape sooner?" I inquired, drawing a deep breath. "Do you think I haven't tried escaping?" Soo-hee retorted with a bitter smile, shaking her head. "During the first cycle, I tried to lead you out. But every time we left the mansion, we ended up right back inside. I tried several times, always with the same result. What's more, each time we left the mansion, time seemed to accelerate. If you doubt my words, try escaping through the window yourself right now." I went over to the window and forced it open. With a jarring creak, it gave way. We were on the first floor. I jumped through the window, but then something uncanny occurred. The moment my feet touched the ground, I was instantly back inside the room of the mansion. Soo-hee gave a sardonic smile. "I didn't deceive you, did I?" A sinister chill slowly crawled up my fingertips. Soo-hee had indeed told the truth. I glanced at my phone, and as expected, time had leaped forward by 15 minutes. Escaping the mansion had hastened time's flow. This was decidedly detrimental to me. Once the initial wave of fear ebbed, I found my calm. "In previous cycles, what did you try to save me?" I looked intently into Soo-hee's eyes. "In the second and third cycles, I attempted to preemptively kill Luran." Soo-hee lit a cigarette, and the smoke gently rose, but her hands were visibly shaking. "But I was no match for him. He ended up killing me instead. During the fourth cycle, I tried to involve the police. They arrived promptly, but claimed they found no one in the mansion. How can that be? We are tangibly here, so I suspect it must be Luran, or rather, the convict, who interfered with something," Soo-hee said as she snuffed out her cigarette. "So, what's our next move?" I had yet to disclose Luran's words to Soo-hee. At this juncture, my trust in Soo-hee wasn't absolute. In truth, I couldn't fully trust anyone. Soo-hee turned her gaze towards me. "This is my fifth cycle. The good news is, in this cycle, you have finally believed my words. Lin-yu, I can't defeat Luran alone, but together we certainly can. One of us could distract Luran while the other strikes. Seize the moment while he's still unsuspecting." Soo-hee retrieved a knife from the bedside drawer and handed it to me. "Kill him and we'll both survive." A flicker of resolve shone in Soo-hee's eyes. I gripped the knife, my hand quivering. The time was 9:50 p.m. I had roughly 2 hours until my anticipated demise. Before me was a precipice. A misstep here could doom me forever. Both Soo-hee and Luran mattered greatly to me, yet one of them was fated to be my killer. Suddenly, Luran's voice rang from outside the door. "Soo, you've monopolized Lin-yu for quite a while, haven't you? You haven't forgotten that today marks our anniversary." Luran's voice was playful at the threshold. All seemed so normal. I clenched the knife tighter. At this point, I could not discern who was truthful.
Sue visibly tensed.
"Luran, don't sweat the small stuff. I'll return Lin-yu to you right now." She signaled to me with a look. I secreted the knife within the folds of my clothing. Mercifully, the winter afforded me the cover of a heavy coat. Soo-hee swung the door open. Following Luran, I then turned back. Soo-hee was standing in the room, her visage obscured in the murky, dim light that seemed to swallow her features. The vast villa stretched the space between the rooms, magnifying each footstep. Without a breath of air, the chandelier tremulously swayed, issuing a plaintive creak. The living room was sunk in shadows. A lone moth in its flight struck the chandelier and spiraled down to my feet. What was once a short distance now stretched endlessly before me. A chill of cold sweat trickled down my spine. I felt an unsettling blend of cold and heat enveloping me. Luran turned away from me, abruptly stopped in his tracks. He rotated his head towards me at an excruciatingly slow pace. I could almost hear the eerie creak of his bones as he moved. "What did Soo-hee confide in you?" Luran's eyes locked onto mine, his expression morphing into an enigmatic, unsettling smile. Goosebumps had already formed a fine layer on my arms. She just aired some grievances about her boyfriend, I replied, my fingers tightening. Really? You seem quite adept at this role, Laurent smirked. I acknowledged with a hum, a bead of cold sweat emerging on the tip of my nose. Suddenly, Laurent reached out his hand towards me. Instinctively, I recoiled a step back. Laurent's fingers paused at my nose tip. Why this profuse sweating? Are you that nervous? He drew his face so close, nearly touching mine. Had Laurent's pupils always been so dark? I distinctly recalled his eyes as a softer shade of brownish amber. Of course I'm nervous. Staying close to someone who might want me dead. With a strained smile and a tight throat, I feigned cheer. Laurent exhaled a sigh. Poor Yaya. It must be hard. This time, I'm determined to end this cycle. His gaze hardened, his determination clear, before he pulled me into a firm embrace. I shrank into his arms, which, once a source of warmth, now emanated an uncanny chill. As I pondered pulling away, Laurent's voice, soft yet icy, reached my ear. What secrets are tucked within your clothes? It was a whisper, yet it struck like the hiss of a chilling serpent. A fleeting glance revealed his pupils, alarmingly shifted to the corners, fixed intently on me. A visceral fear seized my throat. I felt like a fish laid bare on a block, an invisible blade poised overhead. My instincts screamed to flee, yet Laurent's grip tightened around my hand. His pupils, unnaturally dark, bore into me, as if probing for an answer.
Sue handid me a knife.
Realizing further deception was futile, I extracted the knife from beneath my clothes. My hand was clenched tightly around the handle. The blade, sharp and unyielding, was aimed straight at Laurent's chest. A mere push and it would sever his heart. You claimed Sue he was my killer, yet she armed me for defense. Laurent, is your trustworthiness genuine? Do not deceive me. Overwhelmed, tears sprang to my eyes, and a scream of terror tore from my throat. Flashes of my past with him cascaded through my mind, culminating in the stoic visage of Laurent staring back at me. He let out a deep sigh. The events of earlier cycles have unfolded yet again. The first attempt to escape the villa ended with us right back within its walls, hastening the flow of time. In the second and third cycles, I sought to end Soo-hee. In the third, I was close to success. Unexpectedly, you shielded her, fiercely protecting Soo-hee. Are you aware of my fate in the fourth cycle? A wry smile played across Laurent's lips. Soo-hee wasn't my killer. It was you. Swayed by Soo-hee's words, you were the one who ended my life. With a snap, the overhead light abruptly extinguished. I uttered a sharp, panicked cry. Thankfully, the light swiftly returned. The villa, perched on a mountain, frequently suffers from unstable electrical circuits. So, you claim it was me who killed you? My voice was dry as I swallowed hard. Yes, using this knife, you drove it through my heart. Yeah, have you believed Soo-hee once more? Desperation laced Laurent's voice. You know I wouldn't harm you, not even if it results in my death by your hand. Perhaps we should return to the room? I'm terribly disoriented. I admitted, my voice laden with helplessness. Laurent nodded, and we retreated to the room. As I sat on the bed, confusion overwhelmed me. Every word they had spoken seemed irrefutable. I was at a loss to discern the truth. A deep unease settled over me like a shroud. Outside, the heavens opened, unleashing a fierce storm. Huge raindrops thundered against the windows, resounding loudly. Suddenly, the light above sputtered twice. Then, darkness engulfed the room. I stood up, my scream echoing in the void. Laurent quickly held my hand, his grip reassuring. In the pitch black, his features were obscured. His voice, heavy with significance, broke through the darkness. The time is near, just before she initiates the ceremony. This isn't merely a power outage. Soo-hee has deliberately flipped the circuit breaker. A cold sweat trickled down my forehead. Less than 2 hours left, potentially before my demise. And yet, I remained uncertain of my would-be assassin. Was it truly Soo Hee who had manipulated the circuit? Lu Rant's reasoning seemed solid. The villa was hers, and she alone knew where the controls were. Lu Ran hadn't taken my knife, which still lay hidden within my clothes. In the enveloping dark, he held my hand, completely off his guard. Then, suddenly, a lightning strike cleaved the sky. The room flared into visibility for a stark, revealing moment. In that flash, I saw Lu Rant's face distinctly. A visage horribly marred, burnt, and blistered. Tiny, dense blisters festooned his skin. A scream tore from me, and I thrust him away with all my might. "Lin Yu, are you all right? Don't come closer," I stammered, my voice quivering, then flicked on my phone's flashlight, casting its beam onto Lu Ran. His face appeared normal, unchanged, suggesting that ghastly sight was just my imagination. I recalled the executed criminal, burned alive in a police van. Something seemed to constrict my throat, stifling my breath. "Lin Yu, what's happening?" Lu Ran regarded me with bewilderment. "Lu Ran?" I uttered his name with difficulty, feeling as though flames were consuming my chest. "Do you recall where you placed the necklace you gave me for our anniversary last year?" Lu Ran went silent, his face casting a somber shadow in the darkness. "I forgot." "Why this sudden query?" "It's nothing, just a sudden thought." Subtly, I edged towards the door, then sprinted out at top speed. "Lin Yu!" Lu Rant's voice echoed anxiously behind me. I raced through the darkened living room to Soo Hee's door. "Soo Hee, open up!" I hammered on the door in desperation. The sound of Lu Rant's rushing footsteps grew louder behind me. "Lin Yu, why have you trusted Soo Hee again?" As his steps approached at the very last second, Soo Hee swung the door open and pulled me inside. "What's gone wrong? Did he slip up too soon?" Soo Hee's face was etched with concern. I inhaled sharply, fighting for calm. I asked him one question. Though I aimed for calmness, my voice still carried a tremor. "On our last anniversary, I asked where he put the necklace he supposedly gave me. He claimed to have forgotten. But that day, it wasn't a necklace he gave me. It was a handbag. The true Lu Ran would never forget." Soo Hee's voice was fraught with gravity. "I'll go out shortly to distract him. That's your moment to strike. Lin Yu, you've always embodied bravery. If I should fall, you must persevere." Then, unexpectedly, Soo Hee's face softened into a smile as she placed her hand on my shoulder. Tears sprung to my eyes as I tightened my grip on the knife. No, I would not let Soo Hee fall. At that very moment, my phone rang. Overtense, I mishandled it, and it clattered to the ground. As I stooped to retrieve it, something sinister caught my eye under the bed. It wasn't merely an object. It was the pallid, decaying head of a woman. Her bloodshot eyes bore into mine with a chilling intensity. Suddenly, a forgotten, crucial memory trickled back. I had read about that executed killer. After each murder, he would sever his victim's head and hide it under his own bed, finding perverse comfort in their silent company. The phone continued to buzz relentlessly. Soo Hee's voice, unervingly close, drifted from behind me. The back of my neck prickled. Soo Hee's hair had slipped onto my neck as she leaned in close. "Why aren't you picking it up? Your phone is ringing." Her voice was tinged with a chilling eeriness. A deep cold seized my very bones. Could Soo Hee be the true killer, the executed murderer reborn? And had Lu Ran merely forgotten? Shivering, I retrieved the phone, turning to face her. Soo Hee's dark eyes bore into me with unsettling intensity. "Lin Yu, why are you breaking into a sweat?" she asked, her voice spectral. "My stomach is upset. I need the restroom." I dashed into the bathroom and bolted the door. Leaning heavily against it, I slid to the floor, breath ragged. What was that beneath the bed? Soo Hee designs murder mystery events. She often procures props for these games, horrifically lifelike. Could that ghastly sight have been merely a prop? Or was it a genuine severed head? The phone in my grasp vibrated relentlessly, I hesitated, then looked. My heart skipped as I saw the caller ID. It was my own number.
Impossible.
Yet, amid my shock, I pressed the phone to my ear and answered. On the other end, indeed, my own voice emerged, fraught with panic, punctuated by sharp gasps, as though fleeing. With a creak, it seemed I had taken refuge somewhere. Lin Yu, I am you from a future loop. Pay attention. Do not trust. Static. Each hour initiates another loop. Midnight. It marks a rebirth. Only those who endure until midnight in this house will. Static. This is the last loop. Desperately trying to keep quiet, I whispered, "What are you saying?" I couldn't catch it. My words from the phone came muffled, increasingly marred by bizarre static just as the details turned crucial. "If you're me from another loop, you must tell me who's trying to kill me," I uttered, fighting back intense fear. "Hush! Lower your voice. I'm about to be found out." The call filled with sounds of footsteps and my own stifling, oppressive breathing. My heart tightened in an instant. Have you forgotten why we came here? Was it really just to celebrate an anniversary? I heard myself speak gravely from the phone. In the next instant, a chilling creak sounded. From the phone, a voice, hauntingly familiar yet fraught with malevolence, spoke. "Found you now." It was Suhee's voice. Following a scream, the call ended abruptly. Suhee was my killer. Lu Ran had not deceived me. Perhaps he genuinely had forgotten that day. The decapitated head under the bed was real. Suhee was the felon. Piercing cold surged within me. Fingers wrapped around the smartphone quivered uncontrollably. Then, a knock echoed from behind, measured yet urgent, seizing my heart with sudden dread. Only 1 hour remained until my death. Suhee's voice filtered through the door. "Lin Yu, why have you secluded yourself for so long? Are you all right? Time is running short. We need to kill Lu Ran." My heart, which had been pounding fiercely, fell into an unexpected calm. I opened the door, confronting Suhee's piercing dark eyes. "Fine. Let's go end his life and break the cycle." A sly smile curled the corners of Suhee's mouth. She turned to speak, but her expression froze abruptly. Looking down in disbelief, she saw the knife I had plunged into her back. The very knife she had given to me. "You've killed me 5 times. I've merely returned the favor once." "Suhee, no, you can't be Suhee. You've stolen my best friend's body." I conjured a sinister smile. "Perish, beast. The cycle must now end." The blade drove deeply into Suhee's abdomen. Blood erupted violently. Her eyes faded, clouded by a ghostly veil. Yet, her lips twisted into a grim smile. I was petrified. A death rattle sounded from Suhee's throat. Blood frothed at her lips. "Don't dress it up so nobly, Lin Yu. Wasn't it your intention to kill me from the very start? Just 6 deaths and I would have been saved." It was the final round. Why? Why not? Suhee's gaze dulled and drifted. She slumped to the ground, utterly still. What did Suhee's words imply? Why assert that I had aimed to kill her from the start? Mindlessly, I opened the door. Outside, Lu Ran embraced me suddenly. His arms cut through the chill clinging to me. I mustered a faint smile.
I'm sorry.
"I should never have doubted you. Those 5 times before, they must have been so hard. This cycle ends now, it ends right here. We can finally escape this place." Lu Ran cast a glance at Suhee's corpse behind me, tightening his embrace. Only 30 minutes left until midnight. The cycle had finally concluded. I was desperate to leave the confines of the villa. Each lingering second heightened my fear of descending into madness. Lu Ran trailed me silently to the main door. His silence was unnerving, but my mind was too cluttered to consider that. One thought eclipsed all others: escape. I crossed the threshold in a rush, about to savor a breath of fresh air. In an instant, I found myself back inside the villa. Lu Ran stood behind me, his unblinking stare and swollen, pale features unsettling. In that moment, Lu Ran seemed not quite right. as if not a living person stood before me, but a lifeless corpse. My face paled. The relief of survival morphed back into dread. Why? Why are we back in the villa? Even though the cycle was supposed to end. Soo-hee is dead. I'm supposed to have survived. I cried out in desperation. Time unnaturally advanced by 15 minutes. Now just 15 minutes remained until midnight. Lu Ran, what is this? Do we have to wait until midnight to leave? I asked, voice shaking. Lu Ran regarded me with an eerie expression. Then, abruptly, he laughed. His mouth curled into a grotesquely wide smile. Of course it won't end. For two of us remain. Lin Yu, your killing of Soo-hee was most opportune. It spares me considerable effort. I gazed at Lu Ran in horror. A dreadful suspicion detonated in my mind. Could it be that you are the true murderer? Lu Ran regarded me with a smirk that barely masked his derision. Lin Yu, there never were any death row inmates from the start. We fabricated that tale just to deceive you. Have you not yet realized? The fault has always been yours. Had you not killed us, this relentless cycle would not have commenced. He approached me deliberately, his eyes naked with lethal intent. I was abruptly immobilized. In an instant, fragmented memories surged in my mind, coalescing into a long-forgotten recollection. A month prior, I had stumbled upon Lu Ran's secret. He had betrayed me. His affair was with my best friend, Soo-hee. I caught the two I held dearest in a grotesque embrace upon my own bed. Their bodies, writhing together, resembled nothing so much as loathsome slugs. I had anticipated fury, expected to burst forth and confront them. One was my greatest love, the other my dearest friend. For many years, their kindness towards me was unparalleled. I longed to confront them about their betrayal. Yet the words felt brutally choked within my throat. I regarded them with composure, but a chilling resolution crystallized in my mind. This could not be Lu Ran and Soo-hee. They were simply maggots. And maggots, surely, must be exterminated? This realization brought a smile to my face. Thus, I resolved that on our forthcoming wedding anniversary, I would end their lives myself. On that day, I suggested celebrating at Soo-hee's mountain villa. She agreed with alacrity. She herself drove us up the mountain. I served them colas spiked with sleeping pills and watched as they drank deeply. Afterwards, I ignited the villa and observed as their bodies writhed within the inferno. Truly, they were mere maggots. Have you recalled now? Lu Ran's grip on my neck tightened. His gaze was filled with fury. Lin Yu, I should never have been with you. You are deranged. I did stray, but isn't it quite normal for men? Moreover, my heart was still yours. Soo-hee and I simply maintained our physical connection, since you abhorred such intimacy. But I hadn't envisioned that you would actually attempt to end our lives. I was certain of my demise, yet, astonishingly, I awoke anew. A voice assured me I had an opportunity to return to the living. Each hour from 6 till midnight marked a cycle. If I survived the final cycle, I could return to life. The three of us perished in that catastrophic fire. Yet, only one of us was granted the chance for rebirth. Perhaps by divine providence, I alone heard that voice. I persuaded Soo-hee that, by killing you 6 times, we could resurrect ourselves. This is the final time. Your slaying of Soo-hee has eased my burden. Now, by killing you, I can make my return. Lu Ran's grip on my neck intensified. My breathing became increasingly strained. With every ounce of strength, I resisted, my leg striking Lu Ran's critical area. He let out a cry of pain and released his grip. I seized the moment and sprinted towards Soo-hee's room. Lu Ran followed close behind. Exhausted, I reached Soo-hee's corpse and drew the knife. Soo-hee's eyes were gaping, fixed on me. Yet, in that instant, I harbored no guilt. I hadn't murdered my friend. She was nothing more than a fleshly parasite, just as I had once burned her alive. It was merely another act of killing her. At that moment, my calmness was disconcerting. I surreptitiously slid under the bed. The woman's severed head next to me was merely a prop. Lin Yu, Stop hiding. I can see you. Lu Ran entered, pushing the door open. I suppressed my breath, tightening my grip on the knife. He first rummaged through the wardrobe, then inspected the bathroom, before halting by the bed. He gradually bent down. As his face came into view, I ferociously drove the knife into his eye. The blade pierced his eyeball, emitting a nauseating squelch. Lu Ran unleashed a piercing scream. I lunged onto him, stabbing wildly with the knife, like when I was a child, impaling caterpillars with a toothpick. Blood splattered everywhere. I only ceased when Lu Ran was utterly still, catching my breath amidst the carnage. Blood smeared my face and body. Then, a soft yellow light appeared before me. A pregnant woman, her belly large, lay on a hospital bed. Intense contractions had her drenched in sweat. She was on the verge of giving birth. I smiled and advanced towards the yellow light. At last, my silhouette faded within the villa. Side story. I am Lin Yu, a serial killer. In my view, the guilty are but worms in human flesh. To exterminate these pests is nothing less than a moral imperative. My focus was on Lu Ran, a man of reprehensible character. During his wife's pregnancy, he indulged in an affair with a subordinate, driving his wife into such severe postpartum depression that she took her life by jumping from their high-rise. Unrepentant, he seized every last cent of her inheritance. Her elderly parents' hair turned white in a single night, yet they saw not a penny of their daughter's legacy. After meticulously observing him over a period, I reached a firm conclusion. This pest demanded eradication. Thus, I deliberately drew close and successfully entwined my life with his. But the multitude of my killings had not gone unnoticed, and the police were onto me. I had no intention of being apprehended. I still had numerous pests to dispatch before my own demise. This was the mission I was born to complete. My grandmother, a revered witch, imparted to me a secret of soul transference on her deathbed. By sacrificing 2 individuals and ending their lives, I could secure another birth. Lu Ran and Su he would likely never discover that they had been pawns in my game from start to finish. Indeed, there was never any fire. They all remained alive, merely subdued by hypnosis and drugs, drifting in a hallucinatory limbo. The notion of 6 cycles was a mere concoction. The idea they had killed me 6 times was nothing but an illusion. For my own amusement, I subjected myself to hypnosis. To ensure timely awakening, I orchestrated a phone call to myself. A pre-recorded message was all I needed as a cue. The sound of my own voice, regardless of the words, was enough to pull me from the depths of hypnotic slumber. When that call came, clarity returned. What ensued was merely a game, teasing Lu Ran mercilessly. I savor the sight of hope blossoming only to be cruelly snatched away. Lu Ran and Su he were mere sacrificial offerings in my twisted game. Having penned this last entry, I shut the journal and stepped out of the room. At that moment, I bore the guise of a 4-year-old child. Indeed, the spell had succeeded. I had been reborn. Amidst a fierce quarrel about his affair, my father threatened to abandon me and strip away all my mother's wealth. I chuckled with sinister delight. A new maggot had surfaced,